Hi there, kia ora and welcome. My name is Kathy Barker and you've found your way to the first of a collection of videos that support my Microsoft Power BI Reports and Visualizations Part 2 course. If you haven't gone through the Part 1 course, maybe you want to seek that out and go through those videos. This is an extension on that first course regarding reports and visualizations. Now, what I'd like to do first of all is open a file that goes with this course. So I'm in Power BI for desktop. I'm just going to go File, I'm going to go Open Report and Browse Reports. And I'm going to find the file Sales Analysis version 1. So I'm going to open this particular file. Now this is the version 1 file that we did in the first Reports and Visualizations course. I'm now going to save it as Sales Analysis version 2. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Save As, and I'm simply going to replace the 1 in its name with 2 and save it on my desktop again. And I'll just save it. So I've opened up the Power BI file, I've saved it as version 2 because I want to make some changes. Now, if you're curious as to what connections a Power BI file has and you want to manage those connections, you go to Transform Data and Data Source Settings. Now, Data Source Settings tells me that this Power BI file has two connections. It has a connection to a spreadsheet called Orders History and a database called Northwind. Now, I've since moved those files to another location. So if you want to update the connections, click on the first connection and change source. Now, if I then click the Browse button, I can browse for where that file is now located. And if I click Open, I've now re-established a connection, especially if I go OK, to that file. Now, Orders History I've also moved. So I'm going to go Orders History, change source, and I'm going to choose, using the Browse button, the Orders History spreadsheet and open that. And OK. And when I click Close, it's basically going to ask me to apply changes, so I'll do that. And it's basically going to reconnect and reload and refresh the visuals in this Power BI file, given that it now can locate where the source data is placed. So that's the first thing I want to do, is open up the file, save it as version 2 and re-establish your connections. Join me for this journey as I take you through things that you can do regarding reports and visualizations in Microsoft Power BI. See you soon. Hi there, I'm Kathy Barker from Software Solutions. What I want to show you now is how to create a page that has a table and it has a line chart. And that line chart has a y-axis and a secondary y-axis. And I also want to show you how you can sort a particular visualization by a different column. Alright, let's start by first of all inserting a new page. That's this button here. I'm then going to double click it and simply call it Net and Freight. Now if I press Control A and Control C, that takes a copy of that and I'll press Enter. I now want to insert a text box and I can now paste what I copied and pasted, which was Net and Freight. If I press Control A to select it all, I can now increase the font size to 18. I then want to bring the edge, the bottom edge of this text box up and in, and I have best fitted that text box. Okay. Now what I want to do is create a table. So on my visualizations pane, I'm going to go for table. Then I decide what columns I want to show in my table. Now best practice is I've got a dedicated table here which deals with dates. And in this table, alphabetically listed is month and year. I want to add that to my table. Now I can drag it here or I can drag it into columns, whichever you prefer. Now what I want to show by month and by year is the freight and the net sales. Now when I go to the orders, I can't see net sales in there, and when I go to order details, I can't see net sales in there. But I know that the net sales is a matter of grabbing this quantity and multiplying it by this price. So what I thought I might do is quickly create a calculated column. So I'm going to right click the order details query and ask for a new column. This immediately opens up the formula bar and allows me to type a formula to calculate the net sales. The column, I'm just going to call it net rather than net sales, and then I'm going to press equals and square bracket. As soon as I press the square bracket, all the fields in that query called fact order details appear in this list. I want to grab the quantity, so I down arrow and then I press tab to accept quantity. I then want to multiply, so I press the star or the asterisk, and then I press square bracket to choose another field. And what I'd like to choose is the unit price field, so down arrow to unit price, and I press tab again. So this formula is simply saying grab the quantity and multiply it by the unit price and call it the column net. So I press enter. Now I can see in my query I have a column called net, and I simply drag that and drop that into my table, and that has calculated the net by month and by year. If I then want to see freight as well, I'll just drag that and drop that into my table. Now freight I actually want to appear in front of net, so I can actually drag it and drop it in front of freight. No, I cannot. So we go over to here, we drag freight and we lift it above net. So you can rearrange them just by dragging them up and down the columns. Now I think also we should rename some of freight, just freight. So I'm going to double click this, go home and delete the first two words. Double click this, go home and double click the first two words. So we've just got freight and net by month and by year, and I can move that up a little bit. If you want to get rid of, oh yeah, that's fine, and over a little bit. All right, so there's my table. Now I want to show a chart, a line chart to be exact. So let's click on a blank part of the report canvas. Let's click in the visualizations pane, line chart. Here it is down here. I'm just going to move it over, and using my nice red alignment lines, I can align it with the top and the bottom of the table so it's adjacent and spread it out. Now the first thing I look at here is I can decide what I want on the x-axis, the y-axis, or the secondary y-axis. On the x-axis, which is the bottom axis, I want to see the month and the year. So let's just drag month and year and drop that into the x-axis. Now we don't see anything until we put something in the y-axis or the secondary y-axis. So on the y-axis, I'm going to actually show the net. So let me just grab the net, that's the calculated column we created, and drop that into the y-axis. Now I'm starting to see something. Let's grab the freight and drop that onto the secondary y-axis. So that's using the freight as being read against the right-hand side and the net's being read against the left-hand side. But nobody would know that unless we put some titles on. Let's now go to format our visualization. Let's go to the y-axis and let's turn on the title. And so on the y-axis, I'm now seeing sum of net, and on the secondary y-axis, I'm seeing sum of freight. Brilliant. Except I don't want to see sum of. So let's just go back to this data of your visualization, or build your visualization. Let's double click sum of net and just call it net. Let's double click sum of freight and just call it freight. And so that's updated this axis, and also the legend has been updated, which is awesome. Now, as far as the colours of the lines, I like blue because it's colourblind friendly. It's easy for people to see. But I think 2 shades of blue is too close. So I'd like to change freight to be a yellow line. I'm going to go to format my visual. I'm going to go to lines and colours. And I'm going to change freight to quite a bold yellow. And so there is my freight and my net. So I've got my line chart, I've got my secondary y-axis. My only concern now is when I look at the x-axis or I look at the table, it's not sorted chronologically. So one approach might be to click on some of month and year in the table, go to this little actions button here, more options, tell it to sort by month and year, it already is, and tell it to sort in ascending order. It already is. So if it's already sorted by month and year and ascending order, and this isn't correct, then it's treating it as text, because all the A's come first, then the D's, then the F, J. It's alphabetical, not chronological. What we sometimes find is when we create a visual, we want to sort it not by any of the fields that are on the visual, but by a different column or a different field. I'm going to go over to here and choose month and year, and then I'm going to choose this option here, sort by column, and I'm going to decide which field I actually want to sort this table by other than the fields that are actually in the table. And so for this particular option, I'm actually going to choose to sort by start of month, which is actually a date, not text. So I get down to the S's, start of month. And that eventually causes this to be sorted. So even though it's showing the month and year, it's actually been sorted by the start date of each month, which causes it to chronologically sort itself out. Now the same with this chart. If I click on the chart and then I click on month and year and I go sort by, I'll say sort by start of month. And so that will result in this being sorted. If I then go to more options, sort by month and year, go back to options and sort axis in ascending order, then I'll get a match between the table and the chart both being sorted by month and year in ascending order, but by a column called start of month. There it is there. Join me for the next video and we'll explore more about reports and visualizations. Now practice what you've learnt, absorb what we've covered, and I'll see you in the next video.